So today I'm going to be creating 15 Christmas DIYs, and these are all DIYs, but these are one of my favorites. Welcome to Belinda's DIYs. If this is your first time here, I want to welcome you. I hope that you will get some inspiration from some of these Christmas DIYs. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and get started because it is going to be a bit long of a video. So sit tight and grab some coffee. For the first DIY, I'll be creating this beautiful white feather tree. Okay, so I'm going to start by showing you the items that I'll be using for this DIY. The first item is this 100 clear mini lights by Holiday Time, and I purchased these at Walmart. And the electrical wire is in white. And I'll also be using 7 of these white boas, and I purchased them at Dollar Tree. And the brand is Just Pretending Dress Up Fun. Some zip ties, and it's the clear ones that I'll be using from this pack that I purchased at Dollar Tree. And I'll also be using one 42-inch tomato cage that I purchased at Sutherland's. A plastic flower pot, some white spray paint by Rust-Oleum, and this is the 2X Ultra Cover paint and primer. And last but not least, I'll be using this tree topper that I purchased at Dollar Tree. Okay, so I'm going to start by spray painting my tomato cage and also the flower pot. If you decide to do this project, you don't have to necessarily spray the flower pot. I just wanted mine to match with the top of the Christmas tree, so that's why I spray painted it. But like I said, you don't have to. You can use any other color of pot, or you can paint it another different color. It's really up to you. Okay, so I'm done spray painting them, and now I'm just gonna let them sit for a few hours until they're completely dry before I continue with the project. Okay, so now both of my items are dry, and now I'm gonna slip the tomato cage into my flower pot, and I'm just gonna push it down gently, and it's okay if some of the paint comes off from the inside of the pot because that's not going to show. But I'm just going to slightly just press it down until it slips right into the inside of the flower pot. Now, just so you know, they do have different sizes of tomato cages, so you just have to find the right cage that fits into the right flower pot. Okay, so now that it's all put together, you can see that it's taking shape like a Christmas tree. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is zip tie the top ends together. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is start adding my lights to the tomato cage. And I'll be using the zip ties so that I can attach my Christmas lights onto the wire of the cage. And I'll just continue wrapping the lights around the wire until I'm completely done with the lights. Then once I'm done, I go back with my scissors and I cut off the tails of the zip ties. Okay, next it's time to start adding the boa to the wire, and all I do is basically just go around and around like I did with the Christmas lights, and I also add some zip ties here and there just to keep the boas in place. Since this was the first time that I was going to create this Christmas tree, I wasn't sure how many boas I was going to need, but I can tell you that it can stand to take a few more, just so the tree can look fluffier. For the second DIY, I'll be using 3 Beware signs from Dollar Tree. If your Dollar Tree doesn't have the Beware signs anymore, you can use these as well. These would work for this project that I'm about to show you. I'll also be using 3 of these bell ornaments from Dollar Tree, some ribbon, Waverly chalk paint in the color white, some acrylic paints in the color bright red, spice carrot, and lemon. Some stencils, and these are about 3 inches long. You can also use these stencils from Dollar Tree. Okay, so for this DIY with these beware signs, I'm going to turn them around to the back side, and that's where I'm going to be putting all the paint and all the decor. What I plan to make with these are candles. So I've placed my signs side by side each other, and as you can see, they're all the same height. So what I want to do is shorten them, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm just measuring how much I want to cut off from each of the beware signs. One of them I'm going to cut 4 inches. And then for the other one, I'm going to cut 8 inches. And then for this one, I just want to square it off, and I'm going to cut right underneath where those 2 little holes are. And this is how they look now that I've cut them. As you can see, now they all have different sizes. I went from large to small. Since I'm going to make some candles out of these, what I need now is to make the flames. And what I'm going to draw out here is just a shape of a flame, and I'm going to be using the foam board for that. And so here I've marked off more or less where the center of the flame would be on my candle stand. And it's approximately 4 inches wide. And so now I'm ready to draw out a cone shape, and that's going to be my flame. And this is how it turned out. So in total, I'll have 3 of them, 1 for each of my stands. The next thing that I'm going to do is paint all my boards, and I'll be using the red acrylic paint. And now that they're all painted, I'm going to let these dry for a few hours. Next, I'm going to paint my make-believe flames, and I'm going to start with the color yellow. I didn't know exactly how to paint some candle flames, but I googled some pictures and this is what I found. So I started by brushing on some orange paint all around the edges and also in the center. I tried to use the dry brush technique. And this is how my first candle flame turned out. And now I'm done with all 3 candle flames, and they're all a little bit different but kind of look the same. I'll also be painting these other 2. For my tallest board, I'm going to be stenciling in the word peace using some white paint. And for the next board, I stenciled in the word love. And for the third board, the smallest one, I stenciled in the word joy. Next, I hot glued the candle flame to my candle. Next, I created a simple bow and I hot glued it onto the candle. And then lastly, I added the ornament bell. I'll be adding the same items to the other 2 boards. For the third DIY, I'll be using these 2 Dollar Tree dish towels, some cotton from an old pillow, some of these white pom-poms from these Dollar Tree pom-pom packet. So I'm going to start by folding the washcloth in half with both right sides facing each other, and then I'm going to hot glue the edges, and I'll leave a small opening so that I can turn my pillow back inside out. Once I'm done hot gluing, I am going to cut the excess cloth. So I'm going to frame it with some white pom-poms. For the fourth DIY, these are the items that I'll be using. First up are these Christmas ornaments, and I purchased these at Dollar General, and these light up. I'll be using this male snowman that lights up this way, and then also the female. She also lights up. The rest of the materials are from Dollar Tree. I'll be using these 2 snow globe containers, 2 Christmas box decor, 2 bags of faux snow, 1 Halloween lantern, 1 LED candlestick, 1 silver fern bouquet, and also 1 Christmas bouquet with the berries, some matte Mod Podge, and some Waverly chalk paint in the color white, some Rust-Oleum 2X Ultra Cover spray paint in the color Ultra Matte White. And I'll be using a piece from one of these chopping mats, and also a small piece from this decorative nautical rope. And lastly, some mesh ribbon in the color silver. The first thing that I'm going to do is add some white paint to some Mod Podge. And then I'm going to mix them up with my paintbrush. What I'm going to be doing is adding that mixture onto my snow globe. Once I remove the lid and everything that is inside, then I'm going to start to paint my snow globe. So the first thing that I'm going to do is paint the entire snow globe, and then once it's covered in this mixture, what I'm going to do is start rubbing it off with a paper towel. What I want to do is make this snow globe look like it's frosted. By me pouncing the paper towel all around, what it does is the Mod Podge sticks to my snow globe, but also with some paint. So it gives it this frosty look. And this is how they both turned out, and now I'm just gonna let them dry for a few hours. For the Christmas box decor, what I'm gonna do is just remove the hanging hardware and then also the sticker. I am gonna be painting the inside of the box. I'll be repeating the same steps to the other box as well. I'll be using the white paint to paint the inside of the box. I'll also paint the side walls and also along the outside walls as well. I'll also be painting the second box. Once I'm done painting both boxes, I'm going to set them aside and let them dry for a few hours. Now I'm going to start with a lantern, and what I'm going to do is remove the sticker and also the handle off the top of the lantern, and I'm just going to cut it off with my scissors and then just remove the handle from each side. Next, I'm going to pull off the top, and it has these little latches on each side, and you just press down and then you just pull it right off. Then I'm going to slide out the orange plastic lining, and it has this extra little tab, and I'm just going to cut that off. And then this is going to serve as my pattern because I will be using this to cut the clear plastic. Next, I'm going to remove the tea light, and all I have to do is just push down on it and it comes right out. What I want to do is place my candlestick through the opening down at the bottom of the lantern, but as you can see, it's too wide. So what I'm going to do is just make a marking on my candlestick up until where I need to wrap my nautical rope. I'll be adding hot glue sections at a time, and I'm going to start with just a little bit and then wrapping the nautical rope around and making sure I stay within the marking and the edge of the candle opening. And I'm very careful not to glue the opening shut. Now I'm able to slip my lantern over the candlestick, and now it stays in place. Next, I'm going to take all these pieces outside and I'm going to go spray paint them with the matte white spray paint. Next, I'm going to be using a piece of this clear plastic from the chopping mat to make a new liner for my lantern. I'll be using the original orange liner as my pattern, and then I'm just going to trace around it with a pencil. And now I'm going to cut out my new clear liner. And here it is. Now I'm gonna make the folds, and I'm gonna start by where that V is at all the way down. I'll be making a total of 3 folds. There is 3 of those V notches. Once I'm done folding them, this is now the new liner for my lantern. Now I'm ready to start assembling my lamppost, and I'm going to start by inserting the new liner into the lantern. And this is how it's looking so far. And now I'm going to slip the candlestick onto the base. And then next I'll add the lantern on top. What I'm going to do next is embellish my lamppost, and I'm going to be using this Christmas bouquet for that. I'm going to start by making a small wreath using the artificial pine branch. And all I'm going to do is bend it to make a circle, and then I'm going to cut off the pine needles because they're too long. And then I'm going to hot glue the ends together. And then I'm going to cut the berries from that same bouquet to add them to my wreath. The next thing that I'm going to do is wrap some ribbon around my lamppost, and I'm going to start by hot gluing the end of the ribbon up at the top and then just winding the ribbon around it. And now I'm ready to hot glue my wreath onto my post. This is how my Christmas lamppost turned out. The next thing that I'm going to do now is form a base for my snowman, and I'm going to join both of these boxes together by hot gluing the sides. If you're wondering why I chose these boxes for a base, it's because I needed something that would hold the snow in its place, and this is the only thing that I could find at Dollar Tree at the moment. Next, I'm going to hot glue the lamppost to the back edge of the base. Next, it's time for me to put my snowman together, and all I'm going to do is hot glue my snowman ornament onto my snow globe, and I'll do the same thing to the other snowman ornament. Next, I'm going to wrap some ribbon around the neck of the snowman using the same ribbon that I used around the lamppost. And then lastly, I'll be filling the base with the silver fern and the snow. For these projects, I'll be using 2 of these 8x10 picture frames. These are from Dollar Tree. I really love the faux look on these frames. I'll be using this picture that I printed off my computer, and this I scaled it up to 320. And I'll also be using this picture here, and I'll be linking both of the pictures down below. Some Mod Podge, and this Halloween bucket that I purchased at Dollar Tree, some Waverly chalk paint in the color white, 1 glass vase from Dollar Tree, 1 LED candle and also from Dollar Tree, 1 glass candle holder from Dollar Tree. I'll be repurposing this one here. That's the same thing, but this one's already painted white. And some of these Christmas bouquets, several acrylic paints in the color Harvest Orange, Candy Apple, Black, and Arbor Green, a glass jar from Dollar Tree, and some permanent markers in white, black, and red. Okay, so I'm going to start with the first picture frame, and I'm going to remove the backing and also the little metal holders, and I'm just going to end up with the glass itself. For now, I'm going to set the frame aside. I'm going to start by cleaning the glass by using some glass cleaner, and then I'm going to wipe it down. Okay, so I'm going to start by placing this picture right underneath the glass, and then I'm gonna start tracing out the picture. So I'll be starting off with a black marker and I'm gonna outline the snowman's hat first. And then I'm gonna outline the eyes, and then the smile, and then the nose. And then with the red marker, I'm going to outline the mitt and then also the scarf. And then with the white marker, I'm going to outline the side from the snowman's face. And then lastly, with the red marker, I'm going to be outlining the band around his hat. And this is what it looks like now that I'm done outlining the snowman. Okay, so now I'm ready to paint, and now I have my white, my black, my red, and my orange. Okay, so this is the front side of the glass, and now I'm gonna turn it over to the back side, and that's where I'm gonna start painting. Okay, so this is how it looks now with this one coat of paint. I'm gonna let this dry and then I'm gonna go back and then give it a second coat. This is now the second coat and it's already dry, and now I'm gonna flip it over now to the front side and I'm gonna paint the front side now. And this is how it turned out so far, and now I'm gonna let this dry. And now with the black paint, what I'm gonna do is just define the scarf a little bit and just give it a little bit of lines. And I'm gonna do the same thing to the glove. Once the paint is dry, what I'm gonna do now is just add some Mod Podge all over the glass. I just wanna remove some of that shininess from it. This is the matte formula. Now I'm gonna let this dry for just a few hours. Once it's dry, this is how it looks. It gives the glass a frosty look to it. Next, I'm going to turn it over to the back side because now I'm going to be adding some more Mod Podge mixed in with some white paint because I want this to look more frosty than what it looks like already. Once I mix the paint and the Mod Podge together, I'm ready to start brushing on that paint right onto the glass. And now I'm gonna remove it some, and what I'm gonna use is a paper towel, and all I'm gonna do is just pounce a paper towel around until the majority of the mixture is absorbed onto the paper towel. And as you can see, it looks now very frosty. Since I want this to look very wintry, I'm gonna start adding some little dots of white paint because I want it to look snowy. And I'm also going to paint on some snowflakes and then just add some more of the white paint on the hat and just different areas like that so it can look very snowy. And this is how it turned out. Now for this other picture, what I'm gonna do is outline the wording and then I'm gonna cut out the red truck. Since I'm gonna be using this red truck, I don't want any white to show. So I'm making sure that I cut it as close to the edge as I possibly can. Okay, so now the next thing that I'm gonna do is add some Mod Podge to the back of the truck and then I'm gonna place it on top of the glass. And then to seal it, I'll brush on some more in the front. Since I want this to look as it's been painted, what I'm gonna do next is outline the letters with some black paint, and I am gonna be using a brush that has very thin bristles. And this is how it turned out so far. Okay, so now I'm gonna get creative with this, and what I'm gonna do now is add some green paint to the Christmas tree and make it seem like it was painted on. So where I cut off the white piece of paper, I'm just gonna extend the pine leaves out just a little bit. And then I'm also gonna add some black paint to the tires and then just in different little areas where black should be. Just keep in mind that what I wanna do is make believe as if I painted this truck onto the glass. And I also gave it a little touch of white paint here and there. And this is how it turned out. Now what I'm gonna do is follow the same steps as I did to the first picture. I'm gonna add the Mod Podge and I'm also gonna add the white paint with Mod Podge and give it the frosty effect. And this is how it turned out. And now what I'm gonna do is hot glue it onto the frame. So I'm gonna go ahead and just turn the frame over and then place the glass over it and hot glue all the edge. I didn't show this with the first one, but I did the exact same thing. And this is how it looks now with the frame. If I do say so myself, this looks store-bought. Okay, so now I'm gonna start on my lantern and I'll be using these items here. This is what I'll be using for the handle and I got this from this Halloween bucket. And all I did was cut off the ends right there using my wire cutters. Okay, so the first thing that I'm gonna do is add some super glue around the rim of the glass jar and then I'm gonna add some hot glue and then I'm gonna place it over the candle holder. Since I'm gonna be using this as a handle for my lantern, what I'm doing there is kind of flattening the ends because it's gonna go underneath the candle holder and I need it to sit just right. Next, I'm gonna paint the handle with some white chalk paint. And then I'm also gonna paint the base of the lantern with the white chalk paint as well. And now I'm gonna let the paint dry for a few hours. Okay, so now I'm ready to add the handle onto the base of the lantern and I'm gonna be adding some super glue and hot glue to both ends of the handle. And I'm gonna place it underneath the candle holder first and then the top. And then I added some weight up at the top. I do have to tell you that I did struggle with it a bit. It didn't want to stick, so I did leave the weight on all night long and then it was good to go. And this is how it turned out, and I do want to show you the underside. As you can see, it glued a little bit offset, so I did have a little problem with that, but it does look okay. It doesn't look that crooked. Okay, so now I'm ready to add the glass vase. So what I'm gonna do is add some super glue in the center and then some hot glue around the bottom rim, and then I'm just gonna place it on the base. And now I'm gonna decorate it with some greenery and some berries. And then lastly, I'm gonna drop in the LED candle inside the vase. And this is how it turned out. The 10th DIY, I'll be using these clear bowls, and this one right here has a stand already. I found this one in the wedding section at Dollar Tree, but I only found one of them. And also these clear bowls, and these come in a pack of 2. 2 mini bowls, and this one comes in a pack of 6. Some Waverly chalk paint in the color white. Some red ornaments, and these are in a pack of 16. Some miniature disco balls in the color red, some small vase fillers, some candles, a pack of pine cones. The first thing that I'm going to do is start removing all the labels off my bowls. I really love this bowl with a stand already, but like I mentioned earlier, my Dollar Tree only had one. So what I decided to do is make 2 other ones that look almost the same, but of course not quite. So I'll be using the mini bowls as a stand for the bigger bowl. I want the base of my candle stands to be white, so I'm going to start painting the small bowls, and then I'll paint the stand from the one that already has a stand attached to it already. This one here, I'm just going to be very careful not to paint the bottom of the bowl. I'm going to give these 2 coats of paint. And here I'm just pointing out to you that I didn't go all the way up with the paint. And this is how it looks now that the paint is drying. Okay, so now I'm ready to hot glue the smaller bowl onto the larger bowl, just like this. I'll be creating another candle stand, so I'll have a total of 3. Okay, so now I'm going to add the candles to my candle stands. And then I'm going to add some pine cones. And then the mini Christmas ornaments. And then some vase fillers. I'll be adding the same items to the other 2 candle holders. I think these turned out so beautiful, and they were so inexpensive to make, and this just adds this Christmassy touch to any table. For the 11th DIY, I'll be using these 2 box decor from Dollar Tree, and one of these smaller box decor, 2 glass tea light candle stands, and as you can see, this one is taller than the other one, so I intentionally wanted to use a tall one and a shorter one. I'll also be using some green glitter pine, and these are 97 cents, and I purchased these at Walmart. And also some green cypress, and these are also from Walmart. And also a variety of Christmas ornaments from Dollar Tree and also from Walmart. And also the Snowman cup from Dollar Tree. Some contact paper with this wood print on it. Some Waverly chalk paint in the color white. I'm going to start by painting my glass candle stands with the white Waverly chalk paint. I'm going to give these 2 coats of paint. It would have worked better if I had a spray paint, but I didn't have any on hand, so that's why I use this chalk paint. So here I'm showing you that I've already painted my box decor. I painted the back side and also the inside of the box. Now I will be putting some contact paper, and that's going to cover up the opening of those eyelashes. I also painted the small little box, and I painted the inside and the outside. I wasn't going to put any contact paper on this one, but then at the end I decided to go ahead and put some contact paper as well. Next, I'm going to add the contact paper inside the box. And then I'm going to fold the end where I need to cut. So I'm going to start by removing the back liner and then applying it sections at a time. I'll be doing the same thing to the other 2 boxes. And this is how all 3 look. Okay, so now I'm ready to start stacking my boxes, and I'm going to start marking off the center where I'm going to be placing my candle stands. Okay, so the first candle stand will go underneath where I've marked it, and it'll be the 2nd tier, and it'll be like this. Next, I'm gonna mark off the center of the 1st tier where I'm gonna place my candle stand. Okay, so I'm gonna start by hot gluing the first candle stand to the first tier. And then I'm gonna hot glue this one on top of the first tier, just like this. And then lastly, I'm gonna add the third tier. And this is how my 3-tier tray turned out. Now I'm gonna be adding all the Christmas decor. These are some of the extra items that I'm gonna add, like this little red truck, and this I had purchased at Dollar General last year. I'm also gonna add the red sleigh from Dollar Tree, and also this really cute snowman cup from Dollar Tree. I'm gonna add some greenery and also some candy cane just to dress it up some. And I just continued adding some greenery and some of the Christmas ornaments that I had on hand. Some things I mentioned and then some I didn't because I had forgotten that I had laying around. But I just played with it and I just continued adding some of these Christmas decor to all 3 of my tiers until I was completely done. I had been wanting to make a 3-tier Christmas tray, but I just hadn't gotten around to it because I've been decorating my home. But I finally got around to doing this and I think it came out really nice. I love how the white and red just pop. It just looks really pretty. I am so in love how this turned out. I put this in my coffee station and I absolutely love it. It looks so beautiful and so Christmassy. For the 12th DIY, I'll be using 2 Christmas trees from Dollar Tree. And just for your FYI, I have already put together 2 other trees. For the tree base, I'm going to be using 2 floral foams, and it's these round ones here. And if you want to give your tree just more height, you can use this thicker block foam. Some jute cord, some Dollar Tree garland. I'll also be using some burlap. And to decorate my Christmas trees, I'll be using these different mini Christmas ornaments from Walmart. And also from Walmart, some of these mini pine cones. And also some Dollar Tree 16-piece Christmas ornaments. Some buffalo check ribbon. And also some white spray paint. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is remove the base off these Christmas trees. And I'm going to be doing that to both of them. What I'm going to be doing is joining these trees together like this. But before that I do that, I am going to pull the branches to one side so the metal stem will be very visible. And I'll be doing that to the other tree as well. Okay, so now that the metal is very visible and the branches are pulled away from it, now I can join them together like so. I'm going to be using some of this Dollar Tree garland to do that. I'm just going to cut a few pieces. Okay, so I'm going to start by placing both trees side by side and I'm going to bring them as close together as I possibly can. And then I'm going to move the branches away from the center of the bar. That way I can see where I'm going to tie the garland around both trees. And that's how I'm going to keep the trees together. So I'm going to start in the center section and then I'm just going to move down to the lower part and then up at the top. You can really go any order that you want. I just did it that way. And here I'm just pointing out where I added the garland. Now if you wanted to, you could add another tree, but I was okay with just these 2. For the base, I'm going to be using these 2 floral foams and I'm just going to hot glue the smaller foam onto the larger one. Next, I'm going to add some hot glue all around the center bar of both of the trees. And I am going to put a generous amount of hot glue. Next, I'm going to insert the bar in the center of my foam board. And I'm just going to press down on it until the glue hardens. Okay, so now I'm going to start to fluff out my branches. Now that the branches are fluffed out, I see there's another area where my bar is being exposed, so I'm going to add another piece of garland around that area. So what I like to do with these trees is just turn the branches upward as I'm showing you right there. And I'm going to do that to each and every branch. And this is how the tree looks now that I've turned the branches up, and this is how it looked before. I think by just turning those branches up made a big difference. You could leave this tree like this if you wanted, but I want mine to have some white snow, so I'm going to go and spray paint it. I'm going to start spray painting the bottom side, and then I'll go ahead and place my tree upward and then continue spraying it. And this is how it turned out, and now I'm going to let the paint dry before I start to decorate it. These are the other trees that I had already put together, the ones that I talked to you about earlier. And I just want you to see that I use the different sizes of foams, and the reason that I did that is because I wanted my trees to have different heights. The next thing that I'm going to do is cover the base with a piece of burlap. And then once I do that, I'm just going to bring up the burlap to the center of the trunk of the tree, and then I'm going to tie it with a piece of jute cord. Next, I'm going to add all the Christmas decorations and also place a bow up at the top. For the 13th DIY, I'll be using these two Dollar Tree tin vases, some jute cord, some Jot white glue, some Waverly chalk paint in the color white. I'll also be using these Christmas trees from these window clings, and I got this at Dollar General. Some Dollar Tree berry branches, and these have a little bit of frost to them. The first thing that I'm going to do is start painting these vases, and I'll be using the white chalk paint for that. I'm only going to give them one coat of paint. Now I'm going to let this dry for a few hours. Next, I'm going to add some jute cord around the top part of the tin can, and I'm going to start at the back. I'm going to start by adding some hot glue, and then I'm just going to wrap it around a few times. The next thing that I'm going to do is add one of these Christmas tree window clings to the front of my vase. I'm going to add a little bit of this school glue in the front, and then I'm just going to brush it on with my brush, and then I'm going to put the window cling over it. I'm also going to brush the top side with just a little bit of glue that I have on my brush. I'll be making another one like this with just a different cling. This vase right here already has some foam in it because I'm repurposing this vase, so I'm just going to leave it as is. I'm going to start by adding all my berry branches inside my vase. For the 14th DIY, I'll be using these three Dollar Tree Christmas decor, some Christmas picks from Dollar Tree, some wrapping paper in the buffalo check print, and this is also from Dollar Tree, some stencils, some Jot white glue. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is remove this piece of tin metal that's on this Christmas decor, and I'm going to be doing that to all three of them. I'm going to start by lifting the corner with my metal ruler, and I'm going to be very careful as to not bend it too much because I will be using this piece of metal again. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is add this piece of wrapping paper to the back side of my Christmas decor, which now it'll be the front side. So I'm going to start by adding some of this white glue, and I'm just gonna brush it on the ornament, and then once I have put enough of that glue, I'm gonna go ahead and place the paper over it, and just smooth it out with my hands very gently. I do have to tell you that because it's wrapping paper, it can tear very easily and it also gets wrinkled really quick. You can use Mod Podge as an alternative. I didn't have any and that's why I decided to use this white glue. Next, I'm going to brush on some more glue on the top side. I did add a little bit of water to the glue, which made it a little bit thinner and easier to spread. Okay, so now that the glue is dry on all three of my ornaments, it's time for me to start removing the excess paper. And I'm gonna start by trimming it with my scissors and then smoothing off my edges with a sanding block. Next, I'm gonna put back the metal using a little bit of hot glue. And now I'm gonna start stenciling in the letters, and I'm gonna start with a J and then move on to the next ornament with an O and then the next one with a Y. The next thing that I'm gonna do is just sponge in some white paint, and I'll be going all around the ornament. I want this to look as if it has some snow. The last thing that I'm gonna do is decorate my ornaments by adding some greenery and some berries and also some pine cones. For the 15th DIY, I'll be using Dollar Tree Christmas box decor, and I'll be using 4 of them. And this Dollar Tree wrapping paper and a Christmas ornament for $1. I purchased this one at Dollar General, but Dollar Tree also has the same type of ornament. 1 pack of these miniature Christmas trees, and I purchased these at Dollar Tree. And also this miniature little plant from Dollar Tree. I'll also be using some Mod Podge and also some fairy lights from Dollar Tree. Some acrylic paint in the color Latte and also white. The first thing that I'm gonna do is remove those little metal hooks that these boxes come with. And then next I'll be removing the label. Okay, so what I'm gonna do with these 4 boxes is join them together like this. But before that I do that, I am gonna remove some of the sideboards because I'm not gonna need them. So I'm gonna start marking them off with a pen first before I remove them. And here I'm just showing you the ones I marked off that I'll be removing. The 2 top ones, the 2 center ones, and also these that go across, and also these down here at the bottom. Okay, so now I'm ready to start taking off the sideboards. Usually these boards come off really easy just by pulling on them, but these would not come off, so I did have to use my hammer just to make them come loose. Okay, so once I was done removing all the sideboards, I had all these left over, and I am going to put them aside because I will be using them. And this is how it looks now, and now I'm going to start hot gluing the pieces together. I'm going to start with the bottom 2 boxes first. And then for extra reinforcement, I'm going to add a sideboard where I join both of those boards together. The printed side will be the back side of the front of the house. And now that I've joined these 2 together, this is now the bottom half of the house. Next, I'm going to join the other 2 boxes, and this is going to be the top side of the house. And for this as well, I'm going to use some reinforcement by adding another piece of sideboard to the back side. Now that I have the bottom and the top section complete, now I'm going to join them together. Since these sections are a little bit bigger, what I did is I added a sideboard underneath before I start to hot glue them together. This will keep the two sections in balance before they get glued together. And this will also give them the extra reinforcement. Next, I turned it over to the back side and I filled in some areas where it needed some more hot glue. And so what I've done right here is I drew out the roof of the house and how it's going to look. So what I'm going to do now is make those same markings but now on the back side, and I'm going to be using my ruler for that. As you can see, I've placed my ruler in an angle and I'm going to be starting in the top center section and then just come down to the edge of the box. Next, I'm going to repeat the same steps but to the opposite side. And now as you can see the markings, I have now the rooftop. Next, I'm going to be using my handsaw to remove the pieces. One side down and now to the next one. Okay, so this is how my house is looking so far. And what I'm doing next is trying to find the right size of boards that I can use to trim off the roof. These are the same boards that I took off from the boxes originally. I'm going to be painting the trimming of the house this color like my door. So what I'm going to do is mix a little bit of latte into my white paint. Because I don't have like an off-white color on hand, I'm going to have to mix one myself. Okay, so now that I've achieved the color that I wanted, I'm going to start painting the sideboards that are going to be used as trimming for my house. I also cut some smaller ones and those are going to be used as steps for my doorway. I'm also going to paint the trimmings from the bottom section of the house. Once I'm done painting all the pieces that I'll be using, I'll set it aside and let them dry. I'll be using this wrapping paper to cover the front of the house, and so what I'm going to do now is just cut the piece out that I'll be using. Okay, so what I'm doing here is outlining the shape of my house onto the back side of the wrapping paper, and the reason that I'm doing that is because I'm going to be adding some Mod Podge only in the area where I'll be applying the wrapping paper onto my house. And now I'm ready to carefully lay the wrapping paper on top of the front of the house, and then I'm just going to smooth it out with my hands. I had to be very careful because the wrapping paper is so thin that it can tear really easily. This is the first time that I Mod Podge any wrapping paper, and so I noticed that there was some bubbles and I could not smooth them out. The next thing that I did is I cut out some of the excess paper. I didn't get very close because I will be removing it with my sanding block once the Mod Podge is dry. Next, I'm going to add some more Mod Podge to the top of the paper and then just smooth it out with my brush. Okay, so I'm done adding the Mod Podge and now I'm going to let this sit out for a few hours until the glue dries. Okay, so now I'm ready to start trimming off the excess paper, and I'm going to be using my sanding block for that. This will give you a nice smooth clean cut. I'll be using my box cutters to cut the inside edge where the trimming is at. Next, I'm going to start to trim off my rooftop with the pieces of sideboards that I had cut and painted. Once I was done trimming my rooftop, I really didn't like how it looked, So what I ended up doing is cut a triangle shape with the same sideboard, and then I hot glued it to the tip of my rooftop. If you look closely on the edge where the trimming is at, there is some of that red peeking through. I did have to saw that off. And then with those extra sideboards that I had, I painted them and then I created 2 small steps for my house. So what I'm going to be doing is gluing them down. The first board that I'll be gluing is about 2 inches long, and then the smaller one is about 1.5 inches. And now that I have my steps, I'm going to go ahead now and add my door ornament to the front of my house. Next, what I did is add another piece of sideboard to the back side of the house. This will help the house to stay upright. Next, what I'm going to do is add these miniature trees on each side of the door, but first I'm going to remove the little stand on the bottom, and then I'm going to cut off that piece of wire that the little trees have, and then I'm going to hot glue it to the bottom sideboard. And I'm also going to hot glue this small miniature plant to the side where the smaller tree is at. And then lastly, I added the fairy lights around the trimming of my house, and I did have to hot glue them. Before I show you the front side of the house, I do want you to take a look at the back side with all the reinforcement boards. And this is how the house looks now, lighted up. I do want to let you know that this was a bit of a challenge. It was harder than what I had expected, but I did have a lot of fun creating it. Well, that's it for all these 15 Christmas DIYs. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I know it was a bit long, I apologize, but I hope that you took some inspirations from some of these DIYs. You have yourself a blessed day. Until my next video, bye-bye and God bless.